Happy coding.
Hey there, Kevin here, and welcome to our next video in our series in Intro to Web Dev. This is sort of a part two video, so I'm starting right after I ended the last video. So in the last video, we learned about variables and creating them and using operators and passing them into functions. And this video is going to continue that to learn about how to use that to create interactive web pages. So as always, the best way I know how to do this is to just dive right in. So I am still here in my Scratch directory. Um, I've got the index.html file and the script.js file from the last video, and I also have this style.css file that I haven't really done anything with other than add some styling to the container div. But here we are. We are in this web page where I have some HTML. The button calls a function in the JavaScript, and the function itself prompts the user for a name. And then, so I'll enter my name, Kevin, and then shows a greeting, welcome, Kevin, and then also prints that out to the console. So in this video, I'm going to build on that to help you make your web pages interactive. So this is a little interactive in that I do take input from a user and then show some output based on what the user entered. But the HTML itself isn't really changing, the web page itself, and all of it is done through pop-ups, which are kind of annoying and not really what you expect from sort of a modern website. And so we can fix that. And I'm bad at talking and typing. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to make our actual web page itself interactive rather than going through pop-ups for both our input and output. But before I do that, I want to review a concept that we very briefly touched on way back like a couple weeks ago when we were first learning about CSS, and that is the idea of IDs. So way back, 2 whole weeks ago, 3 whole weeks ago, I mentioned that there's a few ways to select an element. And so I can have, oh boy, I don't know, maybe this one. I'll say, I can give this a class and style it. So I'll say class equals, and then I'll say welcome. And I'll save that and I'll go to my CSS, and now I can style that class. So if I say dot welcome, I think I always forget when I switch tabs, welcome dot welcome, and I can style that using CSS. So opening curly brace, some white space, closing curly brace, and I don't know, maybe I'll give it a border of thin solid red, maybe just to have something. And sure. And if I refresh over here, sure enough, nothing works. Let's see, maybe I need to do a cache clearing refresh. So if I do, what is it in Firefox, Control Shift R? Yeah, okay, Control Shift R. I should make an announcement about that. Here I have my welcome is styled with that red border. And this works for a class. So if I have more than one p tag, I can use that same class on multiple p tags. But in this case, I only really have one that has welcome, and so I can also use an ID selector here. So if I only have one, I'm going to use the ID selector, and I'll say ID equals welcome. And then if I go over here, I'm going to use the ID selector, which is not a dot, it is the hash symbol. And here, maybe I'll change it to blue just so we can see a difference. So welcome, and then border, thin solid blue, Control S, and then over here, we're gonna have to do, Control Shift R again, and there we go. I see my blue border because I have selected the welcome ID using this hash symbol. So we are going to need this concept of giving a element an ID in 5 seconds. So just remember that this was a thing. I think like 3 weeks ago, I warned you that we would come back to this, and here we are. We are now using IDs. So this is an attribute that you add to a single element in your HTML. And you can style it with CSS, but the other thing you can do is, well, we're going to see in a second. Okay, so going back to my web page here, the whole problem is that I'm using pop-ups. So I can say, what is my name? By now I'm getting sick of typing my own name, but I can say, okay, and welcome, Kevin. And what I want to do is get rid of this second pop-up. Eventually I'll get rid of the first one too, but for now I'm going to start with getting rid of this second pop-up. I want to add this to the page itself. I want it to go like somewhere in here. And you might remember that we had like a document.write function, so I could try that. So instead of alert, I'm going to say document.write message. So sure, we can try. Control S, refresh. And I'll click the button. I still say, what is my name? I click OK. And now the entire page is replaced. Because document.write is this like kind of old function that was used for like old things, and it replaces the entire page. Generally, you don't want to be using that in modern JavaScript because of this. It replaces its whole page. So in theory, you could do something awful like put all of your HTML in this and do something, but don't do that. Don't do that. Instead, well, first I'm going to change that back to an alert because this is going to give me a nightmare. So hello, okay, that works. So instead of either document.write or alert, what I want to do is create an element in my web page and give it an ID, and then use JavaScript to get a reference to the element with that ID, and then set its content. And the way I do that is, well, a couple step process. So first I'm going to go to my HTML and I'm going to create a new element, and I'm kind of debating where I put it. It doesn't really matter. So I'm going to say like maybe here. And the element itself is just like HTML. And so I'm going to choose a tag. I want to say I'm going to use it a p tag, and I'm going to give it an ID. And so I'm going to call it, I don't know, like output. And then in here, I could just leave this empty and just have like a closing p tag, but just to show you kind of what it looks like, I'll maybe put like loading ... And this is not like special. This is just text. It's just content. I could put literally anything I wanted in here, and you know, it's just HTML. It's not, we haven't done anything with this yet. So if I hit refresh, I see loading, and that's just the text. If I hit hello and enter my dumb name, I still see it in an alert because I haven't touched the JavaScript at all. And I see it down there in the console as well, over there. But now that I have this, I can now write JavaScript that gets a reference to it and then do stuff with it. So going to my JavaScript, let's see, where do I want this? Like right here-ish. I am going to create a new variable, and I'm going to do that by using the let keyword, and I'm going to call it, I don't know, like output element. And so notice the way I'm capitalizing things, this starts with a lowercase. If there's a second word in it, there's no space, but it is capitalized. This is kind of the convention. You can do it other ways, but this is the way I would recommend to do it. And I'm going to set it equal to the value that I get by calling a function, which is document.getElement by ID. And then I'm going to open up my parenthesis. And in here, the argument or parameter is the ID of the element that I want. So in this case, I used the ID output, I think. So I'm going to close my string, close my parenthesis, and then add a semicolon. And so this line of code is creating a variable called output element and setting it equal to the value that is returned or generated by calling this function, which is telling your JavaScript to go into the HTML, find the element with this ID, and give it to me. And so the next thing I can do is say output element dot inner text equals message. And I can get rid of, I'm going to get rid of both of these actually. Um, and so exactly how, well, let me put it back for a second. Exactly how I was calling the alert function with message or the console.log function with message, I am now setting this, which is technically a variable, output element dot inner text to message. And what this is going to do is tell your JavaScript to modify your HTML. So if I hit refresh and I click hello, maybe I should change this this text of this button, but whatever. Hello, I still get what is your name. And now if I type my name and hit OK, I see welcome Kevin right in the page itself. I no longer see that pop up, and it's manipulating the HTML itself. So I could even go like right click and inspect, and maybe I shouldn't have done that because I have too many windows open, but it's in the HTML itself. There it is, welcome Kevin. And that's because the JavaScript itself is modifying the underlying web page. So that is the output side of this. So my page is interactive, but I still do have this like this annoying pop-up at the very beginning, which, works. So if I say Oscar the Grouch, it'll change it to welcome Oscar the Grouch. But let's say I wanted to get rid of that as well. I don't want this to be a pop-up either. Well, I can do that. So let's see what happens if I hit cancel. Welcome, Noel. Cool. Anyway, so I want to get rid of that initial pop-up, which is going to work very similarly to what I just did. I'm going to create a new element, and I'm going to give it an ID, and then I'm going to write JavaScript that does stuff with that element. So let me do that. So let me see, where do I want this? I want maybe welcome to my website, maybe here. Maybe I'll have like an input element. And so if you haven't seen the input element yet, it's kind of a weird one in that it's one of those like self-closing tags where you don't need a closing tag. So if I say input and give it an ID, and I'm going to say equals, and I'll just call it input, I guess. Sure, maybe name input. I always get really annoying about names, but name input, sure. And then I don't need to have a closing input tag, so I'll just not have that. And let me just refresh and see what that looks like. And sure, maybe I'll have like maybe an instruction. So I'll say p tag, enter your name, and closing p tag. Maybe that looks a little bit better. Enter your name, and this is still on the same line. So I could change that with CSS, but just to be kind of lazy about it, I'm going to use the line break tag. So that should just push it down to the next line, and good enough. You know what, I'm going to be slightly more annoying. Okay, fine. All right, that's good enough. And so what I've done so far is I have added these elements, this p tag and this input element. I have not actually done anything, so like this doesn't do anything. If I click hello, I still get my pop-up, and it still takes the value from that pop-up to populate my HTML because I haven't actually changed my JavaScript. So let me remember this, name-input. That's going to become important in a second. So here, now that I have this, now I have this prompt. I currently have this prompt here, so debating kind of how to structure this code. So maybe I'll put it right here. So I'll still have my greeting, that's fine. But now I want my name to be from this input. And so I'm going to do something really similar where I'm going to create a new variable. I'm going to call it let, and I'll say maybe like name input, sure, equals document.get element by ID. And the string is the ID that I gave it back in my HTML, and then close all that out and a semicolon. So I have a reference to the element itself, which is, well, the element. It's the element that contains this whole thing, and I want to get the value from it. So in this case, it's I want the name to be name input dot value. And maybe that doesn't make sense yet, but I'll explain why it's name or why it's value in a second. So for now, I'll just save and glare at this for a second. So I'm creating this variable, name input, setting it equal to whatever I get from calling the document.getElementById function. And then I'm creating a new variable called name, setting it equal to name input.value. Okay, I think that'll work. And then I'm using that name in my greeting. Okay, so let me hit refresh. And because I've entered that, it's going to sort of save that. So let me refresh. That's Firefox trying to be helpful, I guess. So enter my name. My name is still Kevin. And notice there was no pop. Well, actually, I haven't clicked the button yet, but now I'm going to hit hello. And there's no pop-up, and actually it broke. And I am always like, I always debate, maybe I should go back and delete this, edit this out, but this is a normal part of coding. I promise. Getting errors is totally normal. It will happen to you. And so let me look at this, and I see uncaught. Oh, my face is in the way. Let me move that. Sure. I should just turn myself off here. Let me do that. Let's see. All right, I'm gone. I'm still here, but you can see through me now. But I see this error message, can't access property value, name input is null. So we actually kind of saw that when I hit cancel earlier. Null is this special sort of word that means basically like nothing, like name input isn't a thing. What are you doing? And so I'm going to this line here where I define name input, and I'm kind of checking my spelling, name input, document.getElementById. I'm checking my spelling of this, and I'm checking this, and this is a common thing that I do. I always forget what I call things, and now that I'm looking at it, I'm saying output here. Yeah, that's wrong, because back in my HTML, yeah, of course, okay, name input. So yeah, all right, this needed to be input the whole time. And hopefully that makes sense because the ID is name input and it matches whatever's in my HTML. So if I don't know, for example, if I didn't have this dash, if it was just like name input, then it would have to be name input with no dash over here. But I don't know, I'll include the dash. So let me save all these files. That's saved. This is saved. And now I think this will work. Fingers crossed. Let's refresh this. And all right, Firefox saves my name, which is maybe nice, but whatever. So hello. And okay, there we go. Now I see that my page is welcome Oscar. And the reason this is working is maybe I should turn my face on. It doesn't really matter, but you don't really need to see me, I guess. But hey, I'm your teacher. I am by policy designed to have 4 contact hours with you per week, and that's what this is. All right. Okay, so this works because of variables, because I'm calling functions that give me references to the elements in my HTML, and then I'm messing around with them. So in this case, I'm setting the value variable, which is maybe a little bit confusing, and I said I would go back and explain why it's value. And it's because if I have an input element, I can set a value attribute on it. And this is basically like a placeholder. So like, I'll just say, I don't know, your name here. And it's, whatever I type in here is the value. So I'll hit save and I'll refresh. I'm actually not sure what Firefox will do if I have a placeholder in there like that, but yeah, let's see. Refresh and okay, maybe that doesn't work. Why not? Oh, did I not save? Refresh. Well, isn't that interesting? Okay, so again, making mistakes is is a common thing, and I think in this case I haven't actually made a mistake. But let's see if I do a cache clearing refresh, maybe that will do it. So value equals your name here. Let me do cache clearing, Control Shift R, and yeah, okay. It's just Firefox being kind of annoying. So it was saving that my last value was a space, but let's pretend it was the first time I was visiting this page. So if I hit Control Shift R, that is like clearing out the old saved data in Firefox. And okay, here you have it. So if I set the value attribute in HTML, it's whatever is here. And so if I go into my JavaScript and I say name input dot value, it's again whatever is here. And so if I'm the user and I type something, then I am sort of changing the, well, value of the value variable. And that's a little confusing, but basically if you have an input element and you get that input element in your JavaScript, then you can call dot value to get whatever is typed in here. And so that's what name is. And then I, do the rest of the things I do, which I already covered. I will say that this is a little kind of, I don't want to say silly, but like kind of unnecessary. So I say let name equals name input dot value. I could get rid of this step actually. So I could just, I'm going to move this and get rid of name. And instead of name here, I could use this directly. So I'm saying name input is the element that I get when I find the element with this ID. And then I'm saying the message is whatever the greeting is, which in this case is welcome, plus a space, plus name input dot value. Name input is again this element. Its value is whatever the user typed here. And then I'm adding an exclamation point, and then that whole thing is passed into the inner text of whatever element I get from selecting the output ID. So let's start that all over and see what that does. So welcome to my website. Actually, if I click hello here, it'll say welcome your name here. And if I change this to Kevin, it will now say welcome Kevin. And okay, so that is basically what I wanted to show you. We have now created an interactive web page, which takes input from the user and gets the input from an input element and then creates a new variable called message and then passes that message to an output element. And this is at the core of making your web page interactive. You're getting input from a user, you're doing something with it, you're providing output to a user and having that sort of back and forth. And this is a, well, thing. This is based on a concept called the DOM, which is kind of maybe a funny sounding name, but the DOM, D-O-M, is the Document Object Model, which is basically, it's when you go to your browser's developer tools and you like inspect, it's everything that's in here. And it's the fact that you can like click around and you have this sort of like tree structure where it's sort of this hierarchy where like within body you have a div, within the div you have like these p tags, this input element has things like a value. So the document object model is the data behind the web page. So that's all of it. It's your HTML, your CSS, your JavaScript, everything, which is itself accessible to you in your code. And so what we just did, which I am sort of calling like making your web page interactive, is also called DOM manipulation. So that's like a keyword that you can do a search for. So DOM manipulation is like a concept in web development where here it goes. You use JavaScript to change the structure, style, and content of a web page's document object model. It's using JavaScript to mess with your page, which is again at the core of like modern web development, because modern web pages are all interactive. You're always entering data, getting data back, all that good stuff. So just to sort of show you like all of those connected pieces, I'm going to go through one more example and let's see. So right now in my page, I have like in each one, I have a p tag, another p tag, I have an input, and I'll just leave it what it is for now. And I click this button and I see welcome Kevin, and I can change my name, Oscar, and click hello and welcome Oscar. And maybe that's not what I want actually. Maybe once I enter my name, I want this to go away. I don't want this input to stay here. So in CSS, I can hide something by saying, I don't know, if I say like, let me actually just give this an ID while I'm here. So like ID equals, say submit, sure. And so I could, in my CSS, style that submit button to hide it. So submit and display none. But, there's maybe an obvious problem with this, because if I refresh, then my button is gone. I can't click it anymore. So, I don't want that. I don't want that to be like in my CSS by default. But what I can do is write JavaScript that changes my CSS. And this is, again, really at the core of DOM manipulation, because HTML, CSS, and JavaScript all work together to create the final experience for your web page. And so let's see, maybe at the end of this, what I want to do is first I'm going to get a reference to my button. So I'm going to say like let button element equals document dot get element by ID. And again, I've already forgotten what I call it. I think it was submit. And let me double check that so I stop making mistakes. Submit, yep. And in here, I could do something like, I don't know, submit dot inner text equals, and then I'll just empty it out, set it to the empty string, and that'll do something. So if I refresh, back to your name here. So I say Kevin, hello, and sort of, I don't see the button anymore, but it's actually still here. If I zoom in, it's just teeny tiny because I no longer have text in it. So this won't actually. This will still work, Oscar, and I can still click it. So rather than setting the inner text, what I want to do is set its style. And so I can do that by like accessing its style. So I'm going to say submit.style.display equals none. And so this only happens after I click the button. I set the display property of the style of the submit button to none, which is going to hide it, but only after I click it. So let me refresh. Let me type Kevin. Can't spell my name anymore. Let me click hello. And there it goes. My button is now gone. My input element is still there, so I could fix that. So sure, I actually already have a reference to it, so I'll do the same thing. Name input.style.display equals none. And you know what? While I'm at it, I'm going to do the same thing with this p tag. So I'm going to go and give it an ID. ID equals, I don't know, instructions. I'm definitely going to spell that wrong when I get back to my JavaScript, but it's kind of, I can put stuff, put my code kind of in whatever order. This is getting a little messy, I will say. But for now, I'll say let instructions element equal document dot get element by ID. Instructions, I definitely spelled that wrong at least once. And then I can do the same thing. Dot style dot display equals none. And maybe notice that like this is a string, none. I'm not just typing none because that would be a variable. And let's just see what this does. Let's see if this gives me an error message. Let me go to my console. That's not really an error message that we care about. So I've got my name. I'm going to keep switching back and forth. If I click hello, there it goes. My p tag is gone. My button is gone. My input element is gone. And I only see the greeting. And it's because of these lines. And I'm tempted to kind of clean this up, but it's fine for what we're doing. And this is DOM manipulation. This is making your web page interactive because your HTML, your CSS, and your JavaScript all work together. So if I right click in here and inspect, I can still find those elements. They're still in there. Uh, let's see here. So I see here's my ID of instructions, but I see style equals display none, and that's because of these lines. And so I threw a lot of new functions and like this style like sort of variable at you, and that's because I knew them ahead of time. But there are way more. So let's see. So I called like got get element by ID. There's other ways to do it. So if you don't know ahead of time, you can always, go to your favorite search engine, type in, I don't know, JavaScript get element by ID, and read more about it on, AI nonsense, but also W3 schools, MDN, and you can read more about how it works, different things you can do. And what I want to try to find is here, this element. This is the element. Well, it's called an object, but this is the element that you get back, the element type. Exactly like a string is a type, a number is a type, element is a type, and element gives you access to other things. And so here you go. What we were looking at was we looked at inner text. So let me just do kind of a control F for it, inner text. And why is that not on there? Maybe I'll just go to JavaScript element inner text. And sure, maybe. And yeah, this is maybe a little more what I was looking for. So over here on this left, I see HTML elements. And then over here, like underneath that, I see other things, other things you can access. So for example, we set the inner text and we also set the style, but you can also set the inner HTML. So if you're not working with just strings or just like raw text for what you want to say inside of your like output, let's say my message was itself HTML. So I don't know the best thing to do here, but let's say that I wanted, this is going to be kind of a goofy example, but let's say I wanted this to include an H1 tag. So I can do that, H1 plus, and I'm going to close it out here. So plus the string, closing H1, and sure. So let me zoom out a little bit. And so now my message is itself, I'm building an H1 tag where I have my opening tag and then my raw sort of text and then my closing H1 tag. And if I leave the rest of my code alone, I'm still setting inner text on my output element. So if I manage my windows a little bit and now I click OK, or I click hello, I'm going to see that H1 and closing H1 are rendered to the page, and that's not really what I want. I want that to be like HTML. And so instead of setting inner text here, I can set inner HTML, and I always forget whether it's capitalized or not, so that's why you look it up. So inner capitalized HTML. You can also get the inner HTML from an element, but for now we're going to set the inner HTML to my message. I'm going to refresh and I'm going to hit hello. And there we go. Now it is actually an H1 tag because I've set inner HTML instead of inner text, which I found by perusing this, where'd it go? I need to make my, hey, that's a good example of what we were talking about earlier, where the page is responsive and something becomes invisible when the window is a little smaller. But I found it by clicking around in here. So you can play around and look at other things that you can mess with in here. Outer text, I don't even know what that is. Things like remove, things like the style property gets pretty interesting, and all kinds of examples that you can play with. But I think that's where I'll sort of end it. I guess the last thing I will cover is we are now writing like more and more complicated code as we go. And like you've seen in these videos, it is really normal, really common to make mistakes, to type something that you didn't really mean to. And this, like I'm going to keep saying it, it's a normal part of coding. It will happen to you. And when it does, there's a series of things you can do to sort of help unblock yourself. And so I don't know. I already showed you a couple examples by by accident, but earlier I was messing with like this inner HTML field, and I never remember whether it's capitalized or not. So let's say that I messed this up. So get element by ID. Like notice ID is actually lowercase. So let's say I didn't remember that, and I accidentally typed get element by ID. Really common thing that you'll encounter. This is a really common thing that like I do all the time. You will do this, and let's just see what happens. So if I refresh, I click hello, and nothing happened. What the heck? And this again, like I keep saying it, but I promise this will happen. And when it does, um, don't panic. Don't get too frustrated. There's a couple things you should do. So first, the first place you should always look is in your developer tools, in your JavaScript console. So let me open that back up. I've got my web developer tools. I'm going to go to console, and here is my error message. Let me turn my little face off for a second. And here it goes. Document.getElementById is not a function. And that's a hint. And it even says, like, if you really zoom in, can I make this bigger? Yeah, there we go. It even tells me what line of code it's happening on. So in the error message itself, it's saying that it happened when I tried to run this code, and it's on script.js. It's on line 14. So if I zoom out here, I can go to line 14, and that's why these line numbers are over here, because you often refer to them. And here it is. It's this line of code, and this is like your indicator that you should like really stare at this, really scrutinize your code and compare it to the examples, compare it to other code you see. And in this case, it's, I needed my lowercase d here. So save that, refresh, and it'll work again. You could also, go to a search engine and type, I don't know, get element by ID is not a function. And I assure you, many, many, many people have encountered this problem before. So there will be people who have asked the question, and even the AI here understands it usually occurs when the method is misspelled, as it is case sensitive. Get element by ID with a lowercase d, and there you go. And I forgot to turn my face back on. But debugging is a normal part of coding, like it or not. And so when you encounter a problem, which you will, there's a few ways to get to it. JavaScript console, using your favorite search engine, and of course, you can contact me either over email or sign up for office hours or in the help forum. And I don't know, I just want to warn you that now that we're getting into like this like ecosystem of HTML, CSS, JavaScript all working together, your code is going to get a little more involved, and you'll have to do a little bit more debugging. All right, so I will leave it there. What we've done is we have learned how to use HTML, CSS, JavaScript all working together to create interactive web pages by getting input from a user and then doing stuff with that input and outputting it back to the user, and modifying not only the content of the page from JavaScript, but also the CSS of the page through JavaScript. So if I hit hello, there you go. So from here, it's just more of this, I guess. So multiple input elements, multiple output elements, but the idea is the same. You are writing HTML to specify sort of the default content, writing CSS to style that default content, and then writing JavaScript to manipulate it, which makes your web page interactive. All right, I'll leave it there. So in the next video, we'll actually build a project out of this. But for now, thank you for watching. And as always, until next time, happy coding.